Let me introduce you to the Sword Brethren, my new favorite Space Marines. I bought a box of 5, put them together, fell in love, bought another box of 5, put them together, and now I fear them. Last year, the Black Templar got a major facelift with all new models, and I bought so many of them, but they've all sat because I'm too scared to paint them. Every one of these guys is more detailed than any Space Marine captain I've ever painted. And not wanting to commit 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours to this one squad, they've just sat. But I want to play with them. I want to get them painted up. And so I finally decided I'm gonna speed paint them. Now, speed painting means just getting it done and not caring that much about the final result. But I care immensely about the final result. These are my favorite Space Marine models and I need them to be perfect. But I think it's time I can leverage my experience of 10,000 points of painting Black Templar Space Marines and my knowledge of new techniques like speed paint and contrast paint to get these guys done up to my standard in a reasonable amount of time. 8 hours. I'm gonna time myself starting now. Actually, starting now. This is a terrible idea. I should have just done it off camera and let it take a month. You probably already noticed these guys are all Zenithal primed, and why would I want to start Black Templars Zenithal primed? They need to be black. Why paint them white? Well, I am going to be slap chopping these miniatures. Yes, slap chop. Leave your comments accordingly. But I've actually tried this in the past, and it works really well, and I want to run a little experiment. To make my Black Templars black armor color, I use 50% Games Workshop Black Templar, 25% Leviathan Blue, and 25% Contrast Medium. If you were ever curious about exactly what colors I use, there are PDF painting guides on our Patreon. I slap my chops all over the armor of the Space Marines, taking care not to get it anywhere I didn't want it to go. I love the dark gray this gives me, and I was able to wrap up 5 Space Marines in less than 20 minutes. 19 minutes and some change into these models, and I got the Black Templar contrast on 5 of them, but I want to run a little experiment on the remaining 5. I've gone through multiple $8 pots of Games Workshop contrast working on my Black Templar army, so I'm hoping I can switch to Army Painter speed paints. Grim Black and Cloudburst Blue are pretty darn good matches, and at half the price, and with a slower drying time and a better consistency that I actually prefer, I'm hoping I can get away with this. Making the exact same slappity-choppity mix now with cheaper paints, it felt exactly the same going onto the minis as the Games Workshop stuff did. Another 20 minutes later and the whole squad was done. I can just see the difference between the Games Workshop and the speed paints. The speed paint is a little bit darker, but I think that has more to do with my recipe for Games Workshop being locked in, as opposed to my first try with speed paint. I think just a little bit more Cloudburst Blue and a little more speed paint medium would make them indistinguishable, which is great because going forward, these 3 colors cost $13 to buy. These 3 colors cost $24 to buy, so I'm gonna be moving away from Games Workshop. I made a blue-gray and dry brush this on, replacing a traditional edge highlight that would take a long time on every single mini. Each one got a dusting and then another dusting of almost white gray. The armor is done. Well, actually, it's not done. I'd like to give it a silver dry brushing, but now would be a perfect time to paint the gold because I also want to give the gold a silver dry brushing. And if I do those steps at the same time, I've saved myself a step. The way I do gold takes a lot of steps and a lot of paint. I've been tinkering with this formula for years as classic true metallic metal always looks bad to me. Too many years of lead belcher and null oil wash weapons led me to look for something better. I wet blended dark tan, yellow, and white yellow all over their Christmas tree toppers and sword handles. I can hear you guys thinking, Jay, 4 colors, a wash, and 2 dry brushes does not sound like speed painting, and you're absolutely right. Really, right now, I have switched for this step from speed painting to batch painting, doing the same steps over and over on each model. I'm trying to achieve my quality of miniatures very quickly, and that means doing my version of metallics, which is to do non-metallic metal, a very simple version of non-metallic metal, and then dry brushing some true metallic metals right on top. That's just how I like to do it. And usually with a speed paint, your models aren't gonna be super analyzed, you're just trying to get them done, but I'm gonna super analyze my own models, so I wanna make sure that all the details look great even when you're really staring at them. The brown wash hides any crimes in my wet blending, and the dry brushing gives me that sparkle. And the silver dry brushing desaturates the gold a little. The Black Templar are grim and dark, not shiny Sigmar Marines. But before I do that dry brushing, I might as well finish up the other metallics. A little null oil on their chains and guns, and some red on their Primaris pistols, which of course led me to doing red highlights, and then even breaking out the orange and doing some edge highlights. Oh God, no, I'm edge highlighting. This is the opposite of speed painting. Okay, what am I at? 2 hours and 30 minutes. Okay, so my time is over a quarter gone. I gotta start making some moves if I wanna stay under budget. I dipped a little piece of foam in some silver paint and stippled this on everything. These veterans of the Legion are all dinged up like the shopping carts at Walmart. And now I get to dry brush, finishing this step. Step 1, all the armor is complete. Now moving on to step 2, I need to paint all of their loinclothy, tabard, cloak, shirts, thingies, all the stuff on their front. And previously I've been doing assembly line painting, so just doing one step on everybody and then the next step on everybody. Now I'm gonna go one guy at a time. I thinned down some brown and tan paints and globbed these onto their aprons. I used my apron as a reference. Then a brown wash to make my shadows. Then I mixed my brown and tan with white paint and did some highlights. I like to highlight by hand as much as possible, it's good practice. But going fast, I had to do what I would normally do in 5 layers and only 2. 5 hours, 26 minutes, and 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. I'm running out of time quick, but I've got so much done. I got their armor done, I've got their clothing done, I've got their weapons done, actually their guns done. The only thing left to do is their cloaks and their swords, the hardest things to paint. But if they each take me an hour, I should still have plenty of time to do their eyes and their bases and all of the little extra details that each one has. So I'm feeling good, I'm looking good. I'm sure that I sound very confident right now, but I'm excited. Highlighting by hand was perhaps a mistake. I decided to try something different on the capes. I took a massive brush and quickly globbed on lots of speed paint. This will do a decent job of highlighting and shading for me. Then, wanting to prevent myself from actually using a paintbrush on the models, I used my airbrush to spray on the most extreme highlights and shadows with some black and red inks. The capes turned out, but I could not airbrush on the Templar logo, so I had to break out the paintbrushes again and slow the process way down. Dark red, red, light red, very light red, and an orange edge highlight, and they were looking spiffy. My timer just crossed the 7-hour mark, but I'm feeling pretty good. Shoulders done, cloaks done, I'm getting really, really close. The only thing left is their power swords, and power swords are very hard to paint. This is how I've been doing power swords, an example of a Blade Guard veteran. 3 colors, all with a brush, looks lovely, takes a very long time. But I'm hoping I can achieve the same exact effect with the airbrush in hopefully way less than half the time. I airbrushed some blue onto the swords, no time for any paintbrush, and each model got 2 good squirts. Then came masking. It felt really bad to be sticking tape all over my minis instead of actually getting anything done. But this will help me save the little time I have remaining. This looks ridiculous. There's no way this is gonna work. But positive thinking, it has to work. I squirted a line of black in the middle of each sword. I did every single one exactly like this, so I would remember the pattern, white, black, white, and be able to reverse it on the other side. Masking took about 15 minutes, but airbrushing only took 2. Demasking is magical. If it was possible, I would only demask, but to get there, you have to actually paint. I flipped my tape and did the same thing on the other side, this time black, white, black. Then it was time to see if any of this was worth it. The swords look so good. Oh, why do I ever paint them by hand? This is so much better. And it was a lot quicker. 7 hours, 48 minutes and 15 seconds, 16 seconds, 17 seconds. It only took about 45 minutes to paint all of the swords, and they look lovely. About 10 minutes left to do the eyes and the bases, and I'd love to paint their little shoulder shields. We'll see what I have time to do. But you know what I always have time to do? That's right, to talk about our Patreon. Over there, we have new STL train packs available monthly. This month, we have the Dark Manufactorum, a super modular factory with over 75 parts. And to new patrons, we have even more terrain in a welcome pack that includes Dawn of War-inspired Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Elder Terrain, all hosted by Comics, Games, and Things. We make weekly exclusive videos and host Discord hangouts and painting guide PDFs, and a new tier where you can join the ranks of my Black Templar Legion. The airbrush was still wet, so I threw some red ink in there and squirted right into their eyes. And the bases got a coat of dark tan, then a dry brushing of gray to desaturate the colors a little. 8 hours, actually 8 hours and 8 seconds. They're not done, but I was so close. In 8 hours, I went from 10 unpainted dudes to 10, like 95% painted dudes. So I'm pretty happy. And you know what? I'm gonna give myself 1 more hour, and then they're gonna be perfect. With my newfound time extension, I happily painted some freehand red and white symbols on their shoulder shields. Sword Brethren are all Legion heroes in their own right, so I wanted each one to have a little special something to make them unique. And I dotted the eyes with white and then glazed over that with some red ink. My favorite Space Marine models were looking spiffy, but there's one thing I can do to make them even spiffier. We have a tier on our Patreon where subscribers can get their names on a Black Templar Space Marine. This isn't just a Black Templar Sword Brethren, this is Dodecademon, one of the fiercest warriors in the whole crusade. 7 of these suckers got names, and 3 are still waiting. I built these models over the course of probably 2 weeks of evenings, and then they sat on my desk for like 4 or 5 months unpainted because I just didn't have the strength, I didn't have the mental fortitude to sit down and get them done because I was so nervous of how long they were gonna take. But 1 day of painting later, and they are pretty darn nice. 9 hours of painting to get them here. I might put another 9 hours into this squad to make them truly, truly perfect, but they are absolutely playable now. The cost saving measures I did turned out to be a huge success, and I do think that the speed paint capes actually do look a little bit better than the hand painted by me tabards. So I'm definitely gonna be doing a lot more experimenting with contrast paint and speed paint to see what other areas I can cut corners and actually have them end up looking a little bit better than what I can do. And the airbrush power swords, I feel like I finally actually understand what power swords are supposed to look like, because they don't make any sense, this weird like bands of blue, black, and white. But I think what power swords are supposed to look like is a normal steel sword with blue bands of energy radiating through them. And until I actually did it with the airbrush and got a very crisp and clean look, I didn't actually know what effect we were trying to get with these Warhammer 40k power swords. So I am very, very excited, and I'm gonna go and grab every power sword I can find and give them some airbrush treatments. 10 Blade Guard veterans. And by Blade Guard veterans, I mean Black Templar Sword Brethrens. Thanks for watching.